New Orleans signed C.J. Spiller for something other than sitting on the fucking bench.
31 other passes that should have been intercepted with you.
So that's why I have David Johnson on my board higher.
If you're doing a live draft, wait till you're drunk to draft this guy. We welcome you to the Fifth Down.
What up, Fifth Downers? This is Johnny Slokes, and you're here at the Fifth Down, giving you the extra down advantage. Today we're going to be doing episode 17, our NFC West and East Preview. Today we have a special guest here. Please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, it's Joe from Fourth and Long at Fourth and Long on Twitter. A brand new fantasy football account. Just started our site up a couple weeks ago, fourthandlong.net. Check it out. Got some really knowledgeable articles out there and some great rankings as well.
Yeah, so we decided to give them a little bit of practice before they do their first show. When's the guys' first podcast coming out?
Hopefully within the next 2 weeks. Got to get some equipment, set up the right software, and get everyone on the same page and plan out our first episode.
All right, got to start somewhere.
Yep.
So we're going to be going over one of my favorite divisions in all football, the NFC West, and of course East as well. But more importantly, the NFC West has my favorite team, the Arizona Cardinals. There's a lot of exciting players to be had on this team. Who are you targeting on this team over here?
I'm definitely taking a hard look at Carson Palmer. I feel like he flies under the radar still, even after last season. Flies under the radar in the top. He's in the top 10, but he definitely flies under the radar. I mean, he's definitely up for grabs and definitely some of the mid rounds still, I think. And I'd rather take him maybe over Ben Roethlisberger still, because I just think that offense with Bruce Arians is just going to be a well-oiled machine this year.
Yeah, especially when you got a team that has so many different options that they could go to. Sometimes the best option is just to take the quarterback. It appeared to me like he was one of the more consistent quarterbacks last year, and he kind of came out of nowhere. He was to be had on a lot of waiver wires last year.
Yes, definitely. In my league, I remember the guy that picked him up. He went all the way to the playoffs because of him, because of Carson Palmer.
Did have him. I actually drafted him at one point, but I didn't really think that he was going to be what he actually turned out to be. I ended up trading him for Hopkins, which, it wasn't a bad trade, but...
No, that definitely played out all right.
But what I was looking over some of his stats last night. He actually had 11 multi-touchdown games and only 2 games with multi-interception games. So you really got to love the consistency and what he's been putting up there lately.
Yes, definitely.
He had 9 300-yard games, only had 3 games with less than 200-yard games, and one of them was, I believe, week 17, which I don't even believe he played the whole week. So that's what I was getting at, where he was really consistent.
Yeah, and that's one of the highest valued things at the quarterback position, because it's so frustrating. I learned this last year. I waited on the quarterback. I picked Ryan Tannehill, and I ended up living on the waiver wire every week for quarterbacks because I couldn't trust the guy.
And after last year, you figured that maybe he'd be a little bit higher in the draft, but I'm looking on Football Calculator, and he's still going at the back end of the 7th round. So I still think he has a really good ADP right now, and it's definitely a quarterback that's in my sweet spot right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's crazy that he's still going behind Big Ben and Tom Brady right now.
Yeah, it is. Another name to look at there is probably one of the most intriguing guys I think to look at this offseason is David Johnson. He's got so much hype behind his name. I don't know. I can't trust a guy that only played half the season anyway last season as the lead back.
Well, some interesting notes about David Johnson is through November he only had 35 carries.
Exactly.
Really, it was those last 3 weeks where he had 70 carries, but he had I think it was 5.4 yards a carry, and he had those were only 3 games the whole year we had more than 10 carries. So, are you a little bit worried about that small sample size?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of spending my first-round pick on people that have very small sample sizes, such as Ezekiel Elliott, as well. I put those two kind of in the same category of guys that just are surrounded by just the most preseason hype I've ever seen for people who have never really, played a full year. Yeah, I would like to see a guy play a full year as the lead back and have success there before I can trust my first-round pick on him.
I mean, he surely has a lot of promise as a dual threat running back, but he's actually going right in the middle of the first round. He's really high up there for a guy that's really only started 3 games last year, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't take that risk. Some other people can. I respect the guy's athleticism. He is a great display of talent. There's no doubt about that. It's just they still got Chris Johnson there. They still got Ellington. They still got those 2 guys, and those 2 guys have been the lead backs in the past. So what's to say Bruce Arians wouldn't try them again if David Johnson's struggling?
Yeah, especially after those first 10 games, I think Chris Johnson was something like the number 2 running back in all of fantasy, and he's back.
Having a great year.
And you got to think that David Johnson's ADP might even go even higher than it already is now that Le'Veon Bell is suspended too. So I've seen on some rankings where they have David Johnson ranked number 1. Which I can't really argue with it, but you got to really worry about that small sample size. I mean, just think about say a C.J. Anderson of last year.
Yes, the skepticism is very high. I can't argue against the people that say he's worth it, but I can definitely say I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I know our other host, K. Mill, he was unable to make it today, but he's been super high on David Johnson, so I know he's probably a first-round target for that guy. But which of these receivers are you most interested in? They got a trio of them.
I'm definitely intrigued by Larry Fitzgerald. Some people are high on him still, but then there's also a lot of people that argue the other way and say to avoid him at all costs because the numbers just aren't supporting that he's going to have a good year this year from what I've been hearing. Because last season after he had a great start, he kind of teetered off a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I am one of those people that I am towards the other end of the spectrum. I'm not really expecting the same kind of stuff that he put up last year. I actually did make a bold prediction a couple of days ago saying that Fitzgerald would end up on the waiver wire by mid-season. I'm not saying that he is going to be. It was just a bold prediction. But I definitely think he's probably my least favorite out of the 3, although he's still – I think all 3 of them are going at a pretty good value.
Oh, yeah, the value on them is fine. I'm not seeing – in the drafts I've participated in, the draft results I've seen, I haven't seen anyone insanely reach for Larry Fitzgerald or anything, so it's not like that. It's just he's an intriguing guy, and I do think he could end up on the waiver wire. I mean, it's a bold prediction, but he definitely could.
Yeah, possibility. An interesting note, after week 12, he didn't top 66 yards at all, and there's 6 straight games without a touchdown in the second half of the season. So he did, like you said, he did kind of tailor off towards the end. Yeah. Although he did have a pretty monster game against Green Bay, so.
Yeah, and then there's John Brown and Michael Floyd as well back there. I don't really know what to do with those 2. They're kind of always in most of the rankings. They're kind of just back-to-back, so I don't think any pundits or anyone are very clear on where to put those 2 either.
I mean, if you're to take one over the other, you wouldn't be wrong. In all honesty, it seemed like throughout the year Brown was probably a little bit more consistent, but he was actually pretty weak in the fantasy football playoffs when you wanted the most. Week 15 he had 38 yards. Week 16 he had 25 yards. But after week 8, Michael Floyd had 5 100-yard games, so it started to seem like he was starting to put it together, and maybe he could evolve into that go-to receiver.
Yeah, I think Michael Floyd will always be ahead of John Brown in terms of Carson Palmer's reads, but the only problem is, there's the weird enigma for these 2 guys is that Michael Floyd doesn't get touchdowns, but John Brown does. And when John Brown scores, it's usually a reception of 30 yards, 20 or 30 yards or more too. But that boomer bust is it's really hard to roll with.
Kind of the Deshaun Jackson of the offense a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a comparison there.
Yeah, I definitely think that Michael Floyd and John Brown both have more upside than Larry Fitzgerald, but Larry Fitzgerald probably has that safer floor as that like over the middle possession receiver.
Yes, definitely, I agree.
So I mean, there's really no tight end to speak of this team. So we're just gonna move right along over to the Seattle Seahawks. They obviously everybody knows about their hot finish towards the end of last year. Russell Wilson had 19 touchdown passes in 5 games, but if you look at the 11 games before that, he only had 15 touchdowns. So it's kind of like the tale of 2 seasons. Do you expect to find some happy medium in there this year?
Yeah, I'd expect a happy medium, but almost at the same time, I'd expect a happy medium leading more towards the final half of last season. I think Russell Wilson's a great quarterback, and I think that he should have I think the success that we saw at the end of the season wasn't an anomaly. I think you can count on that production throughout next year. He got paid. He's got receivers. He's got a healthy running game again. He doesn't have to worry about beast mode getting injured on him this time. They got Thomas Rawls, hopefully, and Christine Michael as well. And a healthy running game has always been the great complement for that offense. When that running game's going, the rest of the offense is always rolling.
Yeah, he got married. He probably fucked his girl already. So maybe there's some distractions. No, I'm kidding. But where do you see his touchdown total for just passing touchdowns? Do you think it's over or under 28?
That's a tough one. I'd say probably, honestly, like right there. It sounds like I'd say over. I'm gonna say over. Yeah.
I mean, I said 28 because that's kind of like right where I have him, is at that 28 mark. Granted, he could probably get like 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
I got an interesting little game we can play. I'm gonna like this or that. Would you take Russell Wilson over, say, Cam Newton?
No.
No. Russell Wilson or Andrew Luck?
Yes. Russell Wilson.
All right. Russell Wilson or Drew Brees?
I gotta go with Wilson on that one too.
I tend to agree with that. I'm not saying Brees is going to be real bad this year, but I think he has a little bit of a rougher schedule. What about Russell Wilson or Ben Roethlisberger?
I'd definitely go with Russell Wilson there. Russell Wilson doesn't get injured.
Pretty much got Russell Wilson dialed in as like a top 5 quarterback this year.
Yes, I'd say so.
That's a fair assessment. Over to his what seemed to be his favorite target down the stretch, we had Doug Baldwin. Now this is a guy. He had 44 receptions for the first 10 games for only 3 touchdowns. In the last 5 games, obviously we all know he went on a fucking tear. He had 11 touchdowns, almost 500 yards in those 5 games. Now, is this a guy that you think was a one-hit wonder, like a fluke, or do you think this is a guy that can emerge as say a top 15 guy?
I would say no to both. I wouldn't say one-hit wonder. I mean, I think his production will definitely pick. He won't be a waiver wire guy like he's been for most of his career. But I definitely would say he can definitely. I don't know if he cracked the top 15, but he could definitely hover right around that, high-end wide receiver 2 status on your lineup, because I think you can count on him for, a touchdown, definitely at least 3 receptions, like at least 3 or 4 receptions per game, which is decently consistent, so there's some PPR appeal there. But, he gets his targets. He's definitely the best wide receiver in that lineup.
Yeah, I would say where I have him is probably slice his touchdowns in half and give him a small bump in yards, and I think that's the kind of season you're going to see out of Doug Baldwin. Still a very respectable season, but obviously what he did last year is just not sustainable.
Yeah, especially with the way they like to run the ball with Russell Wilson and those running backs.
And honestly, if Tyler Lockett can develop more, I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Lockett actually had more touchdowns.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett is definitely a guy. He has definitely a higher ceiling, I think, than Doug Baldwin in the long run.
I mean, it really all just depends on how are they going to use him. Are they going to keep using him in the kick return game? Because I think that will slice into his offensive production a little bit. So there's always to look at something like that as well. Jimmy Graham, obviously, he had a very bad injury last year. Are you looking for him to come back from that? I'm really not much of a believer.
No, I'm not on the Jimmy Graham type train for this season. I just think he's a great athletic talent, but he's not in New Orleans anymore, and people just have to come to terms with that. He's not in an offense that puts that big of an emphasis on the tight end, and also almost exclusively goes to the tight end in red zone situations. That's just not the Seahawks' way of doing things.
Yeah, it seemed like even when he was healthy, he didn't really quite fit in that scheme of the offense they were running.
No,
and
fantasy.
It seemed like as soon as he went down, that's when Baldwin started picking his game up too. So
I think he was just kind of like a kink in that offense. I think in a non-fantasy way, I don't think the Seahawks invested correctly on Jimmy Graham. To be honest, I just don't think he fits in their scheme whatsoever.
I mean, I just don't think he's going to have that dominant speed to get open down the field anymore, although he does have the size that I think he could be utilized a little bit in the red zone, but they do tend to try to run down there, so that's another downside.
Yeah, I mean, 2 touchdowns last season, it's not sustainable. He's got the receptions in some games and the yards at times, but it's just there's better options out there for sure.
So, what is your take on this running back situation that they got going on over here?
I think it's all noise. I still think Rawls is going to get the primary carries in that offense. He'll get his touchdowns still. I mean, we went through this last year with Christine Michael. I mean, when I heard the news about that, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Literally, this guy last year, everyone was on Christine Michael. They're like, "Oh, he's the guy to get." And he never did anything. So I just think it's all noise. I think it's Pete Carroll just trying to throw people off.
Yeah, I think Christine Michael, he's kind of like that pretty girl that everybody wants, but then once you get her, it's like, oh my God, how do I get rid of him?
Yeah, he's just all hype. I mean, he's never.
Seems like every year he gets that hype, and then it just never pans out to anything. Although it looks like he has been grasping their offense. He has been in that system for a while. It looks like he is definitely in favor to win that number 2 job at the moment. So it's definitely a situation to look into. Obviously, Rawls was looking really good before he dislocated his ankle. It'll be interesting to see how he rebounds from that, which it does look like he should be ready for the season, him and Jimmy Graham. So I was a guy that I was really really into Thomas Rawls before all this drafting of these running backs. It seems like they have 1,500 running backs in that backfield now. That doesn't look like C.J. Prosise is going to get that number 2 job, though. So I don't know if he's really draft-worthy this year.
No, and he was getting a lot of attention in the offseason. A lot of people thought he was going to be a deep sleeper, but with the emergence of Christine Michael, it seems like a lot of that talk is going to be coming to an end. I mean, maybe some dynasty appeal there, but nothing in standard PPR for sure.
I mean, are you at all worried if you're a Thomas Rawls owner at this point of him losing a significant amount of snaps in that backfield?
I'm not, and I'm actually a Thomas Rawls owner. I just drafted him in a draft I had a week ago. I have full confidence in him. He is by far the most talented running back in that backfield, and I think the Seahawks they know that, and they'll continue to know it once the success becomes more consistent during the season.
And say you have that number 1 overall pick. You're picking, and obviously most people are going to take Antonio Brown, and then you have to wait at the turn. He's one of those guys you can get towards a lot of the turns, the 3-4 turn.
Yeah, he's definitely. I think that's a perfect spot for him to be drafted. He's definitely. I mean, if you have him as your RB1 like I do, I mean, I'm not dazzled. I'm not like looking forward to my running back situation, but I'm not mad about it either. I mean, he's definitely a low end RB1, high end RB2. I'd say hovering between that.
Yeah, do you like him more than some of these guys that he's going in front of, like say like C.J. Anderson, Matt Forte, Latavius Murray, like guys like that?
Yeah, I definitely like him better than Murray and Forte because Forte's got his own issues in New York. He's 30. He's got Kyrie Robinson that's going to take goal line carries from him, and Bilal Powell, who, if anyone had Chris Ivory last year, knows that Bilal Powell is just a pain for anyone that has the number one Jets running back.
I think both of those running backs will cut into Forte's playing time a little bit. Yeah. Although I am kind of excited about Latavius Murray. I want to see what he can do behind that line. They are rated pretty highly up there. But
yeah,
I think that's the only guy that's behind him right now that I'd probably take overalls.
Yeah, that's fair. Because the Seahawks, that's the one thing that makes me nervous is the Seahawks offensive line. It's definitely not the gold standard in the NFL for sure. Okay,
we got some other teams here in the NFC West that we can talk about. The LA Rams. It looks like Jared Goff was actually struggling throughout camp. Do you think this offense is going to be completely reliant upon Gurley once again?
Yeah, I'd say so, because it seems almost now like Case Keenum's going to get the starting job to start the season, and that's just never good.
Let's be real. Case Keenum's not scaring anybody either, so they're going to be stacking the box a lot against Gurley.
Exactly.
Does that worry you at all if you're a Gurley owner?
It worried me a little bit, but it still wouldn't worry me enough if I'm sitting with a top 8, top 6 pick in the first round. It's not going to scare me enough to not to pass on Gurley. If I'm at like the 4 or 5 and he's still there, it's definitely not gonna scare me to take him. Because
you got to think that though, in that first round, there's definitely some receivers you'd probably like over Gurley, though, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely after what happened last season, I'm definitely a full believer in taking receivers. But if I value running backs, I'd take Gurley.
I mean, where's your cutoff line of those top receivers at before you start to consider Gurley? Is it like the top 4, top 3?
Yeah. Well, in my draft, I have the 9, and I was sitting there looking at Des Bryant and A.J. Green, and I wasn't too happy with taking A.J. Green, but I still took A.J. Green before I took a running back.
So that's like right where you have your cutoff is like right at A.J.?
Yeah, I'd say so. If it was any deeper, I would have gone
I think that's where I'm at, too. I think I wouldn't argue if someone, say, took Gurley over, say, like a DeAndre Hopkins. I think that Gurley will have a fine season. I'm a little bit interested to see, will he get more involved in the passing game? Because it seems like they will be down a lot this year, so they're going to be chucking the ball down the field. And maybe he can catch some of those dump-offs,
Yeah, I mean, I'd say second year back, I mean, we should definitely see some improvement there in the passing game because the passing game, success comes with experience most of the time, it seems, with backs.
You know what happened last year. There was a lot of injuries at the running back position. Who do you think is actually going to be like this handcuff on this team, say, if you want to handcuff a Todd Gurley? Because now Trey Mason went AWOL.
I mean,
do you think maybe like a guy like Benny Cunningham is more appealing now?
I mean, yeah, I'd definitely say so because, I mean, Trey Mason, no one knows what happened to that guy. I mean, so Benny Cunningham has showed in the past that he has some type of, fantasy appeal. He's got good talent. I mean, I wouldn't say take him, but he's definitely a guy to look for on the waiver wire in the mid-season if you got some injury problems. Or if Todd Gurley were to go down,
there's even a good chance that Cunningham could make that third down back too.
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. He's been there. I mean, he's been around. He's been in that system for a while. A lot of people thought he had a chance at taking the starting job before Gurley got there. So he's definitely got the talent to step in if needed.
Now, is there any receivers worth mentioning on this team? Obviously, you got Tavon Austin. He seems like he's like a Percy Harvin 2.0 without the headaches.
Yeah.
Is that some guy that you're considering toward like in like the middle, later half of the draft?
Yeah, Tavon Austin, I think, is definitely a guy you can consider maybe stashing on your bench just to see how he plays out, because he could. I mean, we all know. I mean, the speed is definitely there in that guy. If he can just get the ball in his hands in the right ways, he can find big yardage and he can find the end zone. It's just the only problem is finding a way to incorporate him into the offense. It seems to always be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Fisher did say he's going to get 100 catches this year. I mean, that remains to be seen. I don't think that's something that Jeff Fisher's ever done in his coaching career. I could be wrong, but I know it hasn't been any time recently.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's definitely got a staff on the bench, but no more than that. I wouldn't count on him. I wouldn't slot him into your starting lineup on week 1 for sure.
You know, another interesting guy they have on that team is Farrell Cooper. He is actually looking pretty good in training camp. Do you think there's any chance that he could end up taking up that number 1 role in that offense?
He could. I mean, there's just a lot of gray area with him. I mean, he's got the skill set. We all saw him in college. He's definitely a talent at wide receiver. But the only problem is, once again, I mean, he's like, I mean, they're still finding a way to slot Tavon Austin into the roster. And I'd say Tavon Austin is more explosive and definitely more talented than Farrell Cooper was coming out of college. So, I mean, that's why it's hard to even think about Cooper as an option to be putting on your team.
Yeah, and if you're in a league where you get, like, return yardage, then obviously Tavon Austin's value gets a huge boost. So that's another thing to consider. Their tight end is a rookie, so we shouldn't temper expectations over there. So we're just going to go on to the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that everyone seems to be intrigued about because of Chip Kelly. What are your expectations for this team?
Well, I definitely expect Blaine Gabbert to be that guy on week 1. It seems Chip Kelly likes Blaine Gabbert over Colin Kaepernick, and as we've seen in the past, whoever Chip Kelly likes coming out of camp and in the offseason, it usually tends to be the starter, even though some other people might disagree on who the better quarterback is. Carlos Hyde, he's got the backfield to himself, essentially. Sean John will probably come in there at times. But, I mean, the only problem with Carlos Hyde is, I mean, aside from that Monday Night Football game, week 1, I mean, he's just absolutely just... He
really didn't do much after that.
Yeah. Not a lot of fantasy appeal there in the running back position. In my mind, I know Carlos Hyde can be listed as high as a top 20 back in some rankings. I just don't see the appeal there, though.
Hey, he's being drafted right there in that middle 4th round. I mean, it's a round where there's a lot of running backs that have question marks, like Forte, DeMarco Murray, Deion Lewis, Latavius Murray. They all have question marks at that point, so I think that's not really a bad spot for him. But you got to really worry about game flow. I mean, if they're playing from behind, you got to think that Sean Jerome's going to be that 3rd down back, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd say he's more seasoned. He's been on teams like every single NFL team, but he's been around. Yeah, he's definitely a guy that they can go to. He's just a good utility guy, I think.
They did bring in a rookie, Kelvin Taylor. I'm not sure what to really expect out of him. I know he's really riding on his father's name at this point, so I'm not really sure like how relevant he will be this year, but that's definitely another back to keep your eye on. They got like a ton of receivers over there that people are intrigued by. It seems like mostly it's been Torrey Smith in that like 8 to 9 round. Are you excited about him at all, or are you just really not liking this offense at all?
Well, we did list Torrey Smith as a potential sleeper on our sleepers and bust section, but I mean, as the time's gone on, I've definitely my expectations and excitement about Torrey Smith have just seemed to go down as the more and more I've heard of what I've heard from training camp. It seems like Bruce Ellington's been the guy that's been getting a lot of the attention about having a good camp and developing great chemistry with Blaine Gabbert, and it seems a lot of people think Blaine Gabbert's more comfortable throwing to Bruce Ellington in the slot, increasing Bruce Ellington's appeal in PPR leagues for sure. And Torrey Smith, I mean, I'm a Ravens fan. He's always a boomer bust guy. Honestly, in Baltimore, the best thing that he did was stretch the field with his insane speed, and half the time he didn't even need to catch the ball. He would just draw pass interference. penalties, which helps move the ball down the field, but limits fantasy appeal for sure.
You know, the last 3 years, the number one receiver under Chip Kelly has put up career numbers. And if Torrey Smith is to put up career numbers under Chip Kelly, that'd put him right around like 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, which I think is a bit of a reach for him. But, I mean, nothing's really out of the realm with Chip Kelly. So,
yeah, you never know. Chip Kelly he's a great offensive mind. He's definitely he's definitely helped some no names in the past, such as Jordan Matthews, just become fantasy studs. So I mean that's why I thought Torrey Smith would be good for a sleeper, because who knows what Chip Kelly has in mind for Torrey Smith for this season. I mean he could do great things still. It's just expectations overall just should be tempered on just like
I'm very content if I have Torrey Smith as my fourth or fifth receiver on my team. Like I'm pretty happy with that. So
yeah, I'm definitely happy with that too.
Another guy that people are starting to take a liking to as like a late round tight end is Vance McDonald. Is he on your sleeper radar at all?
Yes, he is. We have him listed as he's listed at number 30 in our just revised standard rankings. He's a new addition to it just because of all the good things we've been hearing about him and the promise he showed last year as well. He's definitely got to look at.
Would you take him over a guy like Zach Miller?
That'd be tough. I might be tempted to, just because it seems like Vance McDonald definitely has the higher ceiling here with the Bears. Their offense has never been that appealing to me as well. So it just seems like Vance McDonald's got the higher ceiling. He's got the better offensive coach behind him for sure.
I mean, you got to think overall as a team that everyone's going to get more opportunities in that offense than say like a Chicago Bear offense where it's more slower paced. You know? Yeah,
more slower paced, more focused on the run game, definitely.
But I think that I'm a Zach Miller guy. I think I probably would take him over, but definitely a guy you want to keep on your radar. Let's see, I think we finished the NFC West, correct?
Yep, that's all four.
All right, so let's just keep stringing right along. We'll move on to the NFC East. This is a division probably not as good, but probably a little bit more competitive, don't you think?
Yeah, it's always a crapshoot with this division.
Who do you got when taking this division?
Right now, I'd honestly have to go. I mean, it's so hard with this division. I'd have to say I think the Cowboys have a chance this year as long as Romo and Bryant stay healthy. I mean, as long as those two guys are healthy, the whole offense just seems always to fall into place around them. And Tony Romo ain't getting any younger. He's got to realize it's time to shine is now rather than later.
Yeah, I think the whole offensive success is in Tony Romo's hands. If he's not there, I think everyone else is going to suffer a bit. It seemed like even Dez was struggling without Romo last year when he was playing, although I know he was having some foot issues.
Yeah.
Do you see Tony Romo as like a top 12 guy if he stays healthy though?
Yeah, I think he's hovering right around the 10 and 11 spot. Definitely. He's got Dez Bryant, and everyone seems to think Dez Bryant is going to return to his top 10 receiver form. So in order for him to do that, Tony Romo's got to put up numbers as well.
I mean, I think a lot of people are shying away from Tony Romo because of that injury. And because of that, his ADP is looking really good towards that later half of that draft. I mean, he's going pretty late in the draft, like double-digit rounds. So
yeah, he's definitely
if you're a guy that likes to wait, then he's right there for you.
Yeah, if you don't feel like spending one of your early round picks on a top 5 quarterback, Tony Romo's definitely a guy you can wait all the way till the end to draft.
I mean, him and Kirk Cousins essentially have the same ADP according to Fantasy Football Calculator. Who do you like more out of those two, though?
I definitely would take Tony Romo over Kirk Cousins. Once again, I value sample sizes, and Kirk Cousins is a very small sample size, where Tony Romo has, a whole career of sample size, and he's definitely proven in the last 5 years that he can definitely be at that top, right around that top 10 fantasy quarterback, in the top 10 quarterback range in fantasy football. And Kirk Cousins, he had a great season last year. There's no denying that, but his schedule was extremely soft, and I think the Redskins were right to hold off on a long-term contract with him.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. We'll get into Kirk Cousins in a bit. I could definitely get on board with taking Romo over Cousins, although, the injury risks does kind of tend to be a little bit scary. But, Dak Prescott actually looked pretty good in his first preseason game, too. So
he did.
That's a guy you could probably pick up on the waivers, say, if Tony Romo was to go down.
Yeah.
Their running game is always, at least the last couple of years, has been something to be sought after because of that offensive line. They got their rookie now, Ezekiel Elliott. Kind of surprised me a bit when they took him, but now that I think about it, it probably made sense. And it looks like they were actually looking to shop Darren McFadden around a little bit, too.
Yeah, I could see that. They got Alfred Morris sitting right there, and nothing's happened to Alfred Morris. He just kind of fell out of favor in Washington, and now he turns up on the Cowboys, and he's still got that talent.
Yeah, before they drafted Ezekiel Elliott, I actually had Alfred Morris as one of my sleeper picks because of Darren McFadden's injury past, which he already broke his elbow this offseason, so that's a bit concerning. Ezekiel Elliott, is he a first-round draft pick to you?
Ezekiel Elliott, he's definitely, I would never draft him, but I can definitely see why people do. He's definitely worth first-round draft picks. Just I'm not sure if he deserves to be in that top half of the first round, just because, once again, there's no sample size on this guy. Yes, he ran over Division I teams in college, but it's so hard to bet on a guy that hasn't even played an NFL snap because it's such a tough transition for even some of the best college backs.
He's going right there at the tail end of the first, and I think he is a guy that could end up being an RB1. But with that being said, where he's going in that draft, I'll probably never take him, just for the fact that where he's going, there's some receivers there that I like a lot more. Like I wouldn't say maybe like Des Bryant, but maybe like a Allen Robinson. I'd even like Keenan Allen more than Ezekiel Elliott, to be honest.
Yeah, I would take Keenan Allen 100% over Ezekiel Elliott.
But then again, I think that I am a little bit higher on Keenan Allen than a lot more people are, especially in the PPR setting. But with that being said, I wouldn't argue if someone took Ezekiel Elliott in the first round. You can't argue personally is not a guy that I would be targeting in the first round.
No.
The other receivers on this team, do you think Terrence Williams is noteworthy? Des Bryant tend to be hurt last year. Is he a guy that maybe you might consider in the later half of these drafts?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a guy to consider in the last 2 or 3 rounds. He has. He's shown in the past he cannot handle being the number 1 wide receiver in Dallas. I think last year when he slotted into that spot for Des Bryant, I don't think the results were very pretty. He's not a guy that can shoulder the responsibility, shoulder the attention of an entire defense. But he's definitely a guy to look at when Des is there, because he definitely doesn't get as much attention for the defenses, and he can have some of those sneaky games if you bet on him at the right time. If you have got guys on bye or something, you can always slot him into your lineup and take a chance on him.
I've never really been a T-Will guy. He seems to be more touchdown dependent. He can score some touchdowns, but he's never been a guy that's going to accumulate a lot of receptions. So that's kind of why he kind of falls off my radar a bit. Because, as you know, we're all about PPR here, PPR or die. So he doesn't really fit into my radar.
No, he definitely is not a guy you can count on for receptions.
And last but not least, on this Cowboy team, we got Old Man Witten. He's not really the sexiest of picks at tight end, but I do think that he has some tight end 1 appeal. just because he does seem to have a really good connection with Tony Romo. And I think not having Romo kind of hurt him a bit last year.
Yeah, he has, and probably always will be Tony Romo's, most trusted read and option when Tony Romo's out there. So when Romo's out there, Jason Witten always has a chance to have a pretty good game. He's always definitely got a chance for a touchdown. So, I mean, he's definitely a guy that if you missed out on, the Travis Kelce's and the Delaney Walkers of, obviously Gronk, if you missed out on those top, 5 tight ends right there, he's definitely a guy that if you want to wait until the last couple rounds to take a tight end, he's definitely a guy you can trust as your first tight end on your starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that, I tend to punt the tight end position as late as possible if I don't get those, top 3 or 4 options, and it's a guy that can tend to fall to you. But I think Witten is a guy that I would feel much more better about if I match him up with another tight end like a Zach Miller or a Dwayne Allen. That is, if you have the roster space. I really don't like to hold 2 tight ends, but if I had Jason Witten, I think I probably would.
Yeah, he's definitely, that's fair. I could see that. He's definitely a guy that, you can stash on your bench and not feel like you're wasting space.
All right, we're going to move right along here to the Washington Redskins, the Washington Indians. We just brought his name up a moment ago, Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's a guy, on paper, it looked like he had a pretty good season, but if you actually break his stats down further, you start to realize he really thrived on those bottom-tier defenses while playing on the road, or playing at home. He really wasn't that good on the road besides that one Philadelphia game. So, I mean, I think it's definitely a buyer beware with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, you look at his season last year, his best game, not much of a surprise, of course, came against New Orleans at home, whose secondary just doesn't exist. So it's just, he's definitely a buyer beware guy. He's definitely just kind of he's just a big risk. I mean, he's got talent. I mean, obviously it takes skill to even have these, monster games against low-end defenses, but at the same time, I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable having him as my QB1 for sure come week 1.
I mean, the only really good thing that he does have going for him is he does have a lot of options to throw to. I mean, he has Deshaun Jackson, he has Doxson, he has Garcon, he has Jordan Reed, and he also plays in a division that tends to be kind of weak at defense. So there's one thing he does have going for him. So I could get on board with, say, if you're a guy that wants to draft Tom Brady, you could match Kirk Cousins up with Tom Brady for those first 4 or 5 weeks. Yeah,
he's definitely a guy that if you take Tom Brady and you need a guy at the end and you don't want to spend another mid to late round draft, but he's definitely a guy that you would you could trust to fill in for those first 4 weeks, I guess, if you got Tom Brady waiting for you week 5.
I mean, you could get Kirk. It looks like Kirk Cousins has been going towards the back of the 10th round, or you could wait and take some guys like Matthew Stafford or Tyrod Taylor or even Jameis Winston. So, I'm just throwing some names out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, almost with all 3 of those guys, I would probably take over Kirk Cousins just because it seems like, for all we know, Jameis Winston, he's got a high ceiling. You saw today on our Twitter account, one of our 4th and Long members, Ben Larkin, and he tweeted out about he's very high on Jameis Winston and Mike Evans this year. So we're definitely Jameis Winston believers for this season.
And another thing that I think gets overlooked a lot about Kirk Cousins is last year his fantasy point total is highly inflated by the fact that he had 5 rushing touchdowns, which is definitely a number I do not see him repeating because I don't really see him as like that scrambling quarterback, but he had 5 rushing touchdowns last year.
No, he's not a dual threat quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't watch every single Redskins game, so I can't for sure say with 100% confidence that those touchdowns weren't flukes, but I would probably have to get at least a couple of them were either QB sneaks or just fluky, weird plays.
Honestly, I don't even see him getting 3 next year, to be honest. So
no, I wouldn't expect that either.
But they do have a pretty nice value at running back with Matt Jones essentially having the backfield to himself. It looks like Keith Marshall might not even get that number 2 job. He might be losing it to an undrafted rookie. So are you excited at all about Matt Jones and where you can get him?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about that value. He's definitely a guy that, I mean, if you're in a draft with people, I mean, a lot of guys probably really aren't that familiar with Matt Jones. He's not much of a household name at all. He's definitely a guy that, I mean, even last year when he came in, a lot of people were like, really? Like Alfred Morris is losing his case to this guy? But I mean, he really fit in quite nicely. It seems like Jay Gruden and the rest of the Redskins coaching staff really likes him. So I mean, he's definitely a guy that I think you can count on getting, a good portion of the carries in Washington this year.
Yeah, especially if you play in a league like we play in, where your running back gets a quarter of a point every time he touches the ball. That actually almost automatically makes him an RB2 if he stays on the field. The only thing is, can he stay on the field? Because he does tend to fumble the ball, which is really something he needs to work on, because that's the fastest way to get yourself out of the league. So there's one knock on him.
Yeah,
and also, I think doesn't it seem like this is a team that's probably going to rely on the passing game more when they get into the red zone with all those options they have, especially with Jordan Reed?
Yeah, with Jordan Reed definitely takes some appeal away from the running game there, because Jordan Reed is probably the go-to option when they're drawing up plays inside the 20.
I mean, I said this on the last show. If you prorated Jordan Reed's stats to a 16-game schedule, because he played 14 games, he would actually have more receptions and more touchdowns than Rob Gronkowski. Not as many yards, but more receptions, more touchdowns.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat right there.
I mean, do you think at all he has a chance to dethrone Gronk as that number 1 tight end this year?
That's very bold. I could definitely see it being like a bold prediction, but that Patriots offense. I mean, and Gronk is just a freak. I don't think I could ever disrespect Gronkowski like that. He's been the king at the tight end position for so long now.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it did happen, especially in like a PPR league. But I'm not ready to put him above Gronk, obviously. But definitely a guy, if he could stay healthy, could challenge him for that number 1 spot.
Yeah, definitely a very high ceiling for Jordan Reed this coming season.
I mean, I know this isn't really something that's brought up a whole lot, but I guess you could be brought up about him and Gronk. Are you considering maybe drafting or maybe picking up their backup tight end at all? And I know they got a couple of guys over. They got Vernon Davis and they got Niles. Are you at all thinking about them if you have a Jordan Reed on your team?
I mean, yeah, you definitely have to think about them. If you got the bench space, they're definitely guys to think about, because Jordan Reed, I mean, as you know, he has definitely struggled with injuries in the past. So, I mean, he's definitely got potential to stay. He's definitely got potential to get hurt again. And Niles Paul, I mean, one
concussion could be his career, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and Niles Paul, I mean, he showed some promise filling in. And Vernon Davis, I don't know if I could ever trust drafting him. He's just completely fallen off.
Yeah, he was just a name I threw out there. Which one of these receivers do you like the most out of Washington? You got Deshaun, you got Doxson, you got I know Garcon's kind of fallen off the map a little bit. Which one? So I guess it's more between Deshaun Jackson and Doxson. You also got Crowder over there too.
Yeah, Crowder is definitely an interesting guy. He's a guy you don't want to forget about. He's definitely, I mean, he's not a draft. I don't think he's a draftable guy, but he's definitely a guy that you should definitely keep your eye on as the season goes on. But Doxson, I think definitely, I mean, he's got a higher ceiling than I think Garcon and Jackson, because you know exactly what you're going to get with Deshaun Jackson every single year. You're going to put him in your lineup, and you're just going to pray that he catches one of those, 50-yard bombs, and it's going to give you, 15 points for 2 catches. I mean, but then also you're going to have those games where he's going to kill you with 2 receptions for 10 yards.
I think people are sleeping on Deshaun Jackson a little bit because he did miss half of last year. And I think that he's actually going at a pretty good value. I don't know what it's at right now, but I know like about a month ago he was going in like 7th, 8th round. So, I mean, I definitely think he's a value. And I think that Crowder might actually end up taking that Garcon role as a possession receiver until like Doxson gets his feet wet. So.
Yeah, I
definitely got to say that Doxson probably does have a lot of upside because, I mean, the sky's the limit with that guy. He's probably the most polished route runner on that team. So
yeah, definitely. He's definitely. I mean, in a year or two, he could easily be the most talented receiver on that roster.
All right, and before we jump over to Philadelphia, we're just going to go over to the Giants just because it seems like Philadelphia is kind of moving more towards a more boring style offense. So we're going to go over the Giants now because there's a lot of fantasy appeal with this team. I think Eli Manning is probably the quarterback I've been targeting in most of my leagues. Back-to-back 4,400-yard seasons under McAdoo. I'm expecting actually, this is the team that I think is going to end up taking the division as the Giants. They actually improved a little bit on defense, so I think this is a team to look out for in the East.
Yeah, they are. I think they are too. I just can't trust their defense. That's my only problem. But yeah, as you said, they definitely got better. So I definitely think they have a very good chance of winning the division as well. I really, from a fantasy and an NFL fan aspect, I really like I really like this offense, and I really think that they can do great things this year. Yeah, I totally agree. Eli Manning is definitely a guy you can target in your draft. You're not gonna have to reach for him in most drafts as well, so that's always nice too.
I think the 8th round is a pretty comfortable spot to get Eli Manning, and it's like right around that area where if you don't have a quarterback yet, you could actually probably go like Tom Brady, Eli Manning back to back and have a nice little combo.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Eli Manning. I mean, going into his 3rd year with McAdoo. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it's his 3rd year.
Yeah. So having the same offensive coordinator definitely is helping. I mean, as you're saying, the success of the last 2 seasons has been there. I mean, I don't think going into his 3rd year with McAdoo as his offensive coordinator, the offense should only get better.
Yeah, they really don't have much of a run game to speak of, and they got Beckham. They just acquired Sterling Shepard, and they may or may not get Victor Cruz back to form. Probably not. But then they also have the emergence of Will Tye, who's still budding as a tight end. I think that this offense as a whole is pretty explosive.
Yeah, I think so too. I really like Sterling Shepard at that wide receiver 2 position. I mean, I saw some stat that the wide receiver two was like on the field, like 80 or 90% of the time.
He's been making some great plays out there too.
Yeah, he's having he had a great camp. He's looking good in the preseason. I really like Sterling Shepard. He's a great route runner. I mean, I picked him in my draft. I think I got him at a pretty good value as well. He's stashed on my bench currently. But, I mean, he's definitely a guy I think that could work his way up to flex or even a wide receiver 2 at some point during the season.
And every time we bring up the Giants, I always got to ask this question on whoever I'm with. Who do you like more? Do you like Beckham or do you like Julio?
I'd have to go with Odell. I think you can't deny that talent. I mean, and I like Eli Manning over Matt Ryan, so that has some aspect to it. I just think Odell Beckham, I mean, the sky is the limit with that guy. Julio's been kind of somewhat the production's been fantastic, but I think it's just been somewhat plateauing, and it's probably eventually going to taper off a little bit. But Odell Beckham, I mean, the sky's the limit with that man. He is super talented.
I think he plays in the better offense. He has the better quarterback, and I think they'll both have like similar reception totals, but Julio Jones, he's only gotten double-digit touchdowns, I think, like once in his career, while Beckham's done it twice in a row. So, he's done it more recently.
And what it's more is they can both catch the ball amazingly. They both have great hands, but I think it's what Odell can do after he catches the ball is better than what Julio can do after he catches the ball. So that's another aspect that I think plays into that.
And I think it's going to be really fun watching Beckham and Norman go at it again twice this year.
That'll be great entertainment for sure.
I mean, tight end is another thing that seems that they're still trying to figure out. They got Will Tye, who started to butt a little bit towards the end of last year. It looks like he's going to get that number one job over Donnell. Is he a guy that you're leaving his roster worthy at this point?
Yeah, I think he is. If you got a bigger bench in your league, I think Will Tye is definitely a guy you can stash there, and I definitely think he's got a pretty high ceiling compared to the tight ends that are kind of around him, Charles Clay or Kyle Rudolph or those guys. I think he's definitely got a way higher ceiling than the guys around him.
Yeah, so I don't think he's really a guy I'd want as my number one, but yeah, like you said, he makes a pretty good stash if you have a bigger bench. Now, they still, I can't believe they did this. They brought back all of the running backs and then added a running back to the mix. So who do you think's going to emerge out of this pack?
I think it's definitely Rashad Jennings. I think Rashad Jennings is he's going to hold on to that job. I mean, definitely, I think he can hold on to it throughout the whole season as long as he's holding on to the ball. It seems like Tom Coughlin really likes him, and I think Tom Coughlin is trying to go away from that committee style that they had.
I really wish
year.
they would.
He came out. Yeah, he came out and said Rashad's the guy. So I think that's good. That's a good omen for Rashad Jennings this year for fantasy appeal.
Because it seemed like when they finally started feeding Jennings the ball, he started to produce towards the end of last year. And I just wish they would kind of move away from that committee. I kind of wish they wouldn't have brought Andre Williams back. They added Paul Perkins. I don't think this is going to be Paul Perkins' year. I think next year will be his year. I think Rashad Jennings will probably be out of this town by this year. He's starting to get up there in age a little bit. But I think this year it's going to be Rashad Jennings. He's a guy, like, if you're targeting a lot of receivers towards the beginning of the draft, he's definitely a guy you could snag up on your team and use him as like a 2 or a 3.
Yeah, that was exactly what my strategy was in my draft a week ago. I went wide receiver heavy, then I grabbed Rawls, and then a little even later on I grabbed Jennings, a great value, and he's my RB2. I mean, not a flashy guy, but I think he'll definitely get the job done as long as he gets his carries, which is what has been the word out of the Giants camp throughout, all the whole offseason is that Rashad Jennings is the guy. So as long as he gets his carries, I'm not too worried about him.
Yeah, another guy that has a pretty secure role on that offense is Shane Vereen. I think he's more of like a hit-or-miss flex guy, though. I mean, there's times where you could use him last year, and there's times where he just gave you nothing. So
yeah, he's definitely a straight-up hit-or-miss.
All right, so we'll go over to the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a team where no more Chip Kelly. You got to think that their pace is going to slow down dramatically. But there are still some guys to be had on this team, particularly like guys like Jordan Matthews, Ryan Matthews, Zach Ertz. Are you considering like Sam Bradford to have a bounce-back season at all, though? Maybe the pace has slowed down now?
Not at all. I don't have confidence in this guy. He's had injury after injury. I mean, in a way, he's almost kind of reminds me of almost like the Derrick Rose of football without the MVP season, pretty much. So it just seems like he's just this guy. He's going to give you what he's always given you, and that's just kind of average numbers. Yeah. Maybe sometimes will flash a little above average play at times, but I just don't see any fantasy appeal with Sam Bradford.
To me, he's a guy where you need 16 points, he gives you 14, and you lose by 2.
Yep.
That's what happened to me last year.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy you just can't really count on.
I really wouldn't be surprised if he did finish the season as the backup on that team. Not saying that Carson Wentz is going to take him over, but they also signed Chase Daniels, too. So a pretty good contract, actually.
Yeah, Chase Daniel is a very capable backup that can step in if those Philly fans start, throwing things at Sam Bradford.
Last year everyone was all on board with this Philadelphia offense with Chip Kelly there, and I felt like I was like the only person in the world that was just saying, why is everyone so excited about this? You got an injury-prone quarterback, 2 injury-prone running backs, and 2 unproven wide receivers. But Jordan Matthews ended up having an okay season, a lot of garbage time. He's a guy that you can get in like the 4th, 5th round. I mean, I wouldn't mind having him as like my 2nd or 3rd receiver.
No, yeah, I wouldn't mind having him as my wide receiver too. I think he's definitely a guy that you can count on, but that's pretty much it. The appeal ends there. He's not a guy I see that has a high ceiling or anything because again Sam Bradford is not that great of a quarterback. It just doesn't seem like he can give Jordan Matthews the career year that people might think.
He's a guy I'd feel a lot more comfortable as my 3rd receiver than I would as my 2nd receiver. So that says anything. They just acquired Darrell Green Beckham. Where do you see him fitting in this offense?
He's a guy in that offense that definitely I think might have some type of appeal. Maybe just like a guy you grab and stash in your bench just to see what happens.
You got to think his value definitely tanks where it was at.
Yeah, because he's going into a brand new offense. He's got to learn. Yeah,
he's got to learn a new playbook.
He's got to learn a new playbook. Nelson Aguilar is already the quote-unquote promising rookie on that offense.
He looked like an abomination last year.
Yeah, I drafted him. I stashed him on the bench. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm smart. I'm gonna show everyone up with this guy, and he just gave me absolutely nothing.
Just a big headache.
Yep.
I think that maybe at some point in the year that Green Beckham can end up getting one of those outside positions, but I'm really not counting on it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got talent. He's definitely a guy to watch as the season goes on, but no appeal really at this moment.
The running back position to me on this team is actually pretty interesting. I mean, you got Ryan Matthews there. It seems like he's going to be like the bell cow over there, but he does tend to be a little bit injury prone. So I'm thinking that one of those backs behind him could actually be a pretty good sleeper pick this year.
Yeah, I think he could be too. As long as he can hold on to the ball and stay healthy. I mean, he's definitely a guy that I wouldn't feel scared about slotting into my lineup. But at the same time, I still think he's bound to get injured. It just seems to happen every year.
I think the running back that I kind of like the most on that team, it might be a little bit out there, but Kenyon Barner. I think that he'd be the guy that I would look to give the ball to, say, if he was to go down, and I think he might get a lot more carries than people think this year.
Yeah, I can see that too, because Wendell Smallwood's been the guy that, everyone's been talking about, he's a deep sleeper and everything. Watch out, Wendell Smallwood. He's got great talent, but he's injured currently. He hasn't played yet in the preseason. It just doesn't seem like he's going to have that much of a role in the offense to start the season, and that doesn't bode well for the rest of the season. As you say, Kenyon Barner is a guy that is definitely someone to look at as the season goes on if you're trying to find.
He was kind of a guy that came out of nowhere last year. You're like, oh, well, this guy's playing in front of DeMarco Murray at times too. So.
Yeah, there's definitely something to watch.
Currently, though, they have Sproles as slotted as the number 2 running back, but he seems like a guy that isn't going to really be the guy getting the ball in between the tackles. He's more like a third down back, and he is up there in age, too. So.
Yeah, he kind of just reminds me exactly of what Shane Vereen is to the Giants, as we were talking about earlier. He just kind of has a solidified role in that offense that isn't going to change. It's not going to get any worse. It's not going to get any better. He's always going to be that gadget kind of guy.
And then they got Zachary Ertz. He's one of those guys that always seems to get a lot of hype before the season starts, but you really haven't seen that true breakout. I mean, granted, last year he did have 800 yards, but he only had 2 touchdowns. He's never been that red zone guy.
No, yeah, he he's just an above-average tight end, I think. I mean, he's just almost a guy that, like, if you're gonna take a tight end, like, why bother reaching for him when you could just wait and get a guy that has a much higher ceiling or something? It just doesn't seem like a guy that could really, have the ability to take a, waste a mid to late round pick on. I could pick a receiver with a higher ceiling.
And he's going late ninth. He's going in front of guys like Antonio Gates and Jimmy Graham, which I guess makes sense. But I think that's just like the area of tight ends where I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to keep waiting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would take Antonio Gates over Zach Ertz, definitely. I think Antonio Gates, he's got some touchdowns still left in him. He's still Philip Rivers' favorite target. So, I mean, there's definitely some appeal there. Zach Ertz just doesn't seem to match that.
All right. Well, is there anybody else out of these 8 teams that we forgot to mention that you want to bring up?
No, I think we covered it all.
Yeah, I think we ran through it pretty good. I think that'll pretty much do it for today's show. Saturday we'll be covering the AFC North, AFC South. Please follow us at the Fifth Down FF on Twitter, and also you guys got a fourth underscore long. Follow them as well. They're great guys to talk to. They know their stuff. Any last words?
Just check out the site, fourthandlong.net. Check out got our podcast coming up, as I said earlier, and probably within the next 2 weeks. So look for us.
Sounds great. We'll definitely have to give that a listen. Please rate and review us on iTunes, and that'll be greatly appreciated. So peace out, Fifth Downers.